So how many of you have tried to learn a foreign language? It should be all of you at some point. Yes. Maybe. Okay, yeah, okay. How many of you have tried to learn Japanese? Okay, okay. How many of you have continued to learn Japanese? Okay. Okay, so like 3 people, 4 people? Mm-hmm. Pretty good. Yeah, so I've been learning Japanese since 8th grade. Here's why I started. So all my friends were doing it, and I thought it would be cool to learn how to say I like cats, you know, all that kind of stuff. I liked anime a lot, and I've been like exposed to a lot of anime and Japanese culture. Yeah, and I thought I would be cool if I could speak Japanese, and that's it. But now, it's a lot deeper than that. So, as most of you know, I've traveled to Japan before, and so that's something. I keep a lot of sticky notes in my room, just with a bunch of random Japanese words of some objects around my room, just because. Hopefully, I'll be able to remember them. A lot of my projects over the past couple of years have been heavily focused on Japanese culture or Asian culture, and my journal. So this is my planner. Most of it is in Japanese at the moment. So the title there says the week of March 4th to March 10th, and then it has the days of the week. So this is like the equivalent of MT, like Monday, Tuesday, that kind of thing. And then also all my project titles are in Japanese. So there's math and literature, service and art in Japanese, and PLP, which isn't in Japanese for kind of obvious reasons. Yeah. Speaking of PLP, my PLP is also in Japanese somewhat. So this is my pace chart. It's in my journal, but yeah, again, just like this project titles are in Japanese. So sometimes I'll be talking to Ms. K during our meeting and about some project, and I'm looking at my pace chart, and I'll be talking, and then she has to stop me and ask, wait, what project are you talking about? I can't read it. So I just forget that you can't read what I can read anyway. Yeah. So from just liking anime, I've come to develop a greater understanding and love for the culture. Of course, I still like anime now, but not to the extent that I did before. I was a weeaboo, thank you, Ms. K. But yeah, don't worry, because this presentation is not going to be about how Japanese is the best language and you should all learn it and go live in Japan, because that's kind of unrealistic. And you don't even have to know anything about Japan or Japanese for this to be potentially interesting. Also, there'll be an activity, hence why the benches are like that, so you don't have to just sit there silently for the whole hour. Have fun. Yeah, so as I said before, I've been studying Japanese for a long time, starting in 8th grade. This is what I looked like in 8th grade, just for reference of what kind of person I was. Yeah, that was me. So in 8th grade, I just started learning, and I just learned the very basics, mostly focusing on just the writing system. And I used Mango languages to learn for the most part. So this was way back before Duolingo had any Asian languages on it. So it was just like Spanish and French, and that's kind of it. So yeah, I had to use another program. I got help from my sister Tasia, and yeah, I wasn't that serious about it, so I didn't progress very far this year or that year. And like I said before, I'm mostly focused on the writing. So Japanese has 2 writing systems basically. The first one is kanji, which are the more complicated characters with meanings that you usually imagine when you think of Japanese or Chinese. And then there's the other one, which is kana, so it's comprised of hiragana and katakana, and those are just like our alphabet. They don't carry any meaning, they're just sounds. So I was mostly just learning the kana in my first year. So in 9th grade, that's what I look like. I didn't do any work over the summer from 8th grade to 9th grade, so it took me a few months to remember everything and do that review. Tasia, my tutor sister, introduced me to the Genki book, and she gave me assignments based on the chapters for every few weeks, but like I said before, I wasn't very serious and I just wanted to have fun, so it was too fast for the pace that I was going at the time. Yeah, and I got 1 credit this year. So the credit keeps adding up every year, which I thought was interesting. This is where I wanted to make my foreign language projects a bit longer than usual. So I talked to Ms. Holmes, and she said that if you wanted to have a foreign language project over 1 credit, you needed an immersion experience. And it just so happened that the next year I went to Japan. So it's a pretty good immersion experience, if you ask me. I still didn't do any summer work the previous summer from 10th grade, so I had to review the writing system, the grammar, and the vocabulary again. So I kept learning more, but I kept forgetting it all at the end of the summer, so I'd have to relearn it again. It was just not a good process. I started learning a little bit of kanji that year, and yeah, I went to Japan for the first time. That's what that looked like. It was pretty fun. Also in 10th grade, I wrote my first Japanese log. So I'm going to read it to you in English real quick. So it says, I studied Japanese. I studied at a dance recital. Studied for 1 hour because I threatened. So that's not correct. That's not what I was trying to say. The last 2 sentences are just a little bit wrong. So let me explain why. So the first sentence says benkyou shite, which means study, like it's a command. What I was trying to say was benkyou shita, so you can see the difference in the characters a little bit, which is informal past tense. So I studied instead of you should study. Yeah. The second sentence is a little bit hard to explain, but I basically just used the wrong verb conjugation. So odoru is a verb that means to dance, and odosu is a verb that means to threaten. So I just, you change the end of the verb to conjugate it, and I just did that incorrectly, so, yeah. In 10th grade, I got 1.2 credit. And that brings us to last year, in 11th grade. So, on the summer from 10th grade to 11th grade, I realized that working over the summer was going to benefit me. And it did. I didn't have to spend lots of time reviewing. So, at this point, pretty much all of my 6-week projects were about Japanese culture or of some sort. I started logging and journaling in Japanese a lot more, and I went to Japan again, which you saw me and Jacob present in the fall. Yeah. That year I got 1.5 credit, so it went from 0.9 credit in 8th grade to 1.5 credit in 11th grade. So that brings us to this year. Over the summer, I studied Japanese again because, you know, it helps. And I think I knew in the back of my mind that Japanese was what I wanted to do for my senior project, but I was hesitant because I still didn't really know what I wanted to do for college. So I was afraid that if I did something that I wasn't doing in college, it would be like a waste of a senior project. And I also thought, I was afraid that people would think lower of me or not take me as seriously because it's become like a trend or a cool thing to like Japan and want to go to Japan and learn Japanese, but I took it a little bit more seriously than that. But after traveling to Japan for the 2nd time, I realized that it doesn't really matter if people don't take me seriously because I can, 1, I don't care, and 2, I can prove to them that I am serious about it by what I do. Yeah, so I decided I wanted to do something with this senior project besides just spending 300 hours studying a language. So I chose to have a more research-focused aspect. However, I didn't know what I'd be researching yet. Over the summer, I just focused on studying the language, staying familiar with it, and studying vocabulary, which was my weak point at the time, and probably still is. Once the school year began, I started brainstorming my topic ideas. Here's what that looked like. I found that the best way for me to organize my thoughts and make plans is to just first dump everything that's my brain out somewhere. So that's what I did here. And after doing this, I felt a lot better, and I kept looking back on this page and adding to it throughout the whole year. I had also started my class. So, if you didn't know, over the course of this year, I took 2 Japanese classes at Lawrence University. Lawrence functions on trimesters, so it worked with my schedule to take 2 out of the 3 terms there. The 2 classes I took were Beginning Japanese 1 and 2. Now, these classes were pretty easy in terms of content. as I mentioned, I'm not exactly a beginner. So why did I take the beginner classes? Well, let me tell you. So Lawrence works off of the Genki books, which I've been working off of this whole time. So previously, I had finished the whole first Genki book, the orange one, except for some kanji. So that's what the first term of Lawrence works off of. The first term of Lawrence, first year, Japanese, is the first half of Genki 1. The winter term, or the second term, covers the second half of Genki 1. And then the third term, the spring term, covers the first half of the second Genki book, which is the green one. Yeah. And then, when you get to year 2, the first fall term covers the second half of the second Genki book. So both of the first terms were not at the position that I was. So I had 2 options. I could either cram a whole half of a textbook into one summer, spend all summer just studying Japanese and memorizing kanji, or I could take the beginner class. I took the beginner class. Because, after thinking about it, I figured the transition into a traditional style college setting would be hard enough, and taking a class with extremely challenging content on its own would not be smart. So, yeah, that's what I did. There would be many other things that would challenge me along the way as well, such as managing the workload, the pacing, and that if I wanted to do an out-of-class activity, I had to go actually sign up for it. I couldn't just ask someone, like a parent or a teacher, to go do it for me, so that was a challenge. In the end, I think it was a better decision to pick the easier classes. Being in a class setting like I was and taking a college class in general improved a lot of things for me, such as my speaking and listening skills in Japanese, my social skills in email and in person. I had to email a lot, and I learned how taking a test works and kind of how grades work as well, because I've never been in a traditional style school before. Yeah. So during the winter break from Lawrence was when the majority of my sit down and take notes research would take place. So this is where I get a little bit more informational. I group my research into 5 main topics: the structure, phonology, loanwords, honorifics, and sexism of Japanese language. The structure is focused mostly on learning the language, and I studied this through my Lawrence classes. Phonology is also related to learning the language, but I went further into research and a bit more depth on how the sounds are pronounced in Japanese. The rest of my topics I chose are based on the general subject of sociolinguistics. So sociolinguistics, very, very basically, is the study of language and how it connects to society. Phonology is how words are pronounced and how the mouth works to make those sounds. After understanding the basics of general phonetics, I related that to Japanese. One of the defining features of Japanese is its syllable structure. In Japanese writing, the majority of characters are made up of one consonant and one vowel. Therefore, Japanese syllable structure roughly goes consonant-vowel, or CV-CV. An example of this would be watashi. So I could use any word, really, but this means I, or me. And so the first is made up of 3 characters. The first character is wa, which is the consonant-vowel, W-A. Same with ta, consonant-vowel, and shi, consonant-sound, vowel-sound, even though there's 2 consonants in the English spelling of the sound, sh. So because of the way that we articulate sounds, processes can happen in order to ease the articulation and make it easier for words to flow out. This is called hypoarticulation. A common example in English is the letter T. For most of us, it's easier to say certain than certain when you talk casually. Once you start thinking about it, there are so many instances in English where we shorten or omit certain sounds, and you could probably hear some in this speech as well. And it's the same in Japanese. The easiest way for me to explain this is through example, so bear with my pronunciation as I try to say them, sort of maybe how a native speaker would. Okay, so the first example means to like, and if I were to read this without having any knowledge of Japanese, I would read it like suki, maybe. But if I'm trying to sound more like a native speaker or more like a normal person, I would omit the U sound a little bit, and so turn it into more of a ski. So ski, yeah. The next one is very common for people to mispronounce when they don't have any speaking or listening tutoring or any experience. So if I were to read this without knowing anything, I would probably read it something like desu. But usually people omit the oo sound, so it would sound something more like des. The last example I'll explain is the third word, which means came. So if I were to read this without having any knowledge of Japanese, I would either probably say kita or kira. But if I were to try to say it like a native speaker would, I would say something like kita. So the I is kind of like whispered, if that makes sense. Yeah. So something that can happen with a process of hypoarticulation is a merger. So this is where two phrases, sentences, or words can sound exactly the same when they're spoken casually or more fast. So the phrase kakika, is it a persimmon, and the phrase kakuka, do you write, can both sound like kakka. However, it might be a little bit hard to mix these two phrases up when you're talking to somebody in a conversation. Another way that language can be modified is by the words that get added to it. Like almost all languages, Japanese has been borrowing words from other languages since ancient times. During the 15th century, the main source of new words was China. Then, during the 20th century, English became the main source, and those English words are referred to as loanwords. So, Japanese linguists have categorized the lexicon according to the origins of a word. So words that originate from Japan are called wa-go, wa meaning Japanese and go meaning language. These words have been traced back to before China had any influence on Japanese. They can be written in hiragana or katakana. Words borrowed from China are referred to as kango, kan meaning Chinese and go meaning language again. This category includes words introduced by the Chinese and then developed independently in Japan. These are spelled using only kanji, but use a different pronunciation from the wa-go kanji. So kanji can have multiple pronunciations or readings depending on what word it's involved in or what the origin was. Yeah. The last category is called gairaigo. Gai meaning outside, rai meaning came or come, and go meaning language once again. This translates to words that came from the outside. So this includes words from the European languages, but excludes Chinese. They're commonly referred to as loan words in English and use only the katakana writing system. So here's where you need to start paying attention because I'm going to have you play a game pretty soon. Yay, fun. So we'll be playing a game where you have to guess the loan words. My advisor might recognize some of the examples and might have a bit of an advantage, and of course the people that know Japanese. Because in advisory we played something similar. So like I said, loanwords are written using a writing system called katakana. The words are spelled out phonetically, so I'll give you the phonetic spelling with the Roman characters that you're used to. However, Japanese doesn't have as many sounds as we do, so there are a few rules that I have to explain before we can start. So, Japanese has 5 vowels like we do, but there's only one pronunciation for each one. A is pronounced A, I is pronounced E, U is pronounced U, E is pronounced E, and O is pronounced O. For consonants, they have fewer. So they only have 12 consonants, and the Z and the J sound is kind of a mixture of both of them, so it's kind of like a Z. Yeah. Since they only have 12 consonants, they substitute some of our sounds like the following. So one that you see commonly in media is the R and L sounds being mixed up. So I'll be romanizing them as R's today, but note that R can also be an L in English, like in the example celebrity. So they use R, they shorten celebrity to celeb, and then you say it with a Japanese accent, but their sound just sounds something like serebu. So it's kind of like an R and an L, but yeah. but I'm just writing it as R. They also substitute V with B sounds, like in TV. So they shorten television to televi, but then when they say it with their pronunciation, they don't have any V sounds, so they use the B sound. So something like terebi. Another tendency is for some R's to be omitted. I think of it as they like to take some British pronunciation to form some words, like in the example hamburger. So hamburger in Japanese is hamburger. So instead of burger, it's baga. Another important thing to point out is vowel deletion. So, like I previously mentioned, most words have the order of consonant vowel. So, like in the word ski or ski wear, there's no character for just S, so a vowel has to go after it, even though that's not how it's spelled in English. So, the first character is pronounced su, but like the vowel deletion like before, it's kind of ski wea. So now I'm going to hand out a sheet with some words that I haven't mentioned, and you're going to try to figure out what English word it came from. Do you have any questions? Okay. So you're going to be divided by your benches. So I'll give each bench a sheet and a pencil.
I've been just playing with this. I have no clue. I think it's going away. Is there improvement? I think. There's nothing at all. It feels fine now. Oh, okay. This puts us to a vision. So we guess what this word is.
Does anyone else need a pencil?
So we've got this.
By the way, all the rules are up here if you need to refer back to them. It's like a pipe that goes over. Hello again. So motivation for winning. The team that gets the most points at the end, I'll give each person an origami crane, and they can choose. You can choose the color too. A crane. You have 1 minute. Okay, we're done now. So, this first team, what's your first answer? Game Center. What about you? Game Center. Game Center. Game Center. Everybody get Game Center? Yes, yes. Okay, can anybody guess what a Game Center is?
Arcade.
Yeah, it's an arcade. You all get 1 point. Everybody check 1 point, okay? Okay, next one. Okay. Yeah. Anybody else? Backpack? All right. Jared?
Oh, we're the same place. Like that.
Yeah. You didn't? You had knapsack? Okay. Yeah. Same thing. Okay, next one. What do you guys have? Ball pen? Bulletin? Ball pen? Blue pen? Blue pen? What? Yeah. Oh, borrow pen? Okay. Anybody else have any other answers? Yeah. Ballroom? Okay. So the answer is ballpoint pen. So ball pen, I'll count. Okay, what do you guys have for the next answer? Elevator? 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 Yes, everybody? Okay. Yes, elevator. Okay, next one. Miracle? 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 Milk. Milk? Milk? Mirror? Anything else? Okay. America. Okay, the correct answer is milk. Okay. Last one. Yes, Aiden? Teenager? Teenager? Television? Anything else? Okay. Yes, it's teenager. Okay. Who got 6 points? You guys? There's a tie. Guys, what do I do? Huh? Rip the crane in half? Wait, no, I have enough, I think. Okay, the winning teams can come up here. Grab their choice of origami crane.
I'm so proud I got yeah, they're beef from oh, I remember now. I'm really smart.
Okay, we have extra cranes. Who got 5 points? Okay.
We got 4.
Yay. Okay. Thank you guys for being so cooperative. So, let me continue. So those are called loan words. Now you guys know some Japanese. You can say milk. Yeah, so loan words, even though they're cool and all that, they've been a topic of debate in Japan, as some Japanese people believe that the recent increase in loanwords has resulted in some cultural issues. So, one thing that they have trouble with is communication with the elderly. So, since they're older, they don't know as many of these new cool words. So it can be hard to communicate your ideas and for them to communicate their ideas if there are some complicated words that they don't know, that the younger people don't know. The next one is the survival of Japanese culture. So they think that if they keep using our words and increasing the amount of words that they use, the traditional actual Japanese words will begin to disappear and be forgotten. And also superiority. So if you know more English words, then you're cooler or smarter, or you sound more educated. So this is a poem that illustrates people's thoughts on loanwords. Some people's thoughts. So a senryu is a 17-syllable humorous poem. So this is a businessman's humorous poem. So it goes. Kaigyo e, mazu wa jisho hiku, gairaigo. So, the meeting is over. Immediately, I look up in the dictionary to check all the gairaigo, all the loan words. Yeah. So, while loanwords come from outside cultures and languages, other issues originate from inside of the culture. One of these is sexism in Japanese language. This can be defined as everyday words that people use to imply that women are lesser than men. This is a big problem in Japan. Although Japan is said to be a very advanced country technologically, culturally it's still very traditional. It's still fairly common for women to get married and become housewives, and is even expected of them. Here are a few words that can describe this expectation. So, okusan means wife, and the literal translation is Mrs. Interior. So it's a very common word or phrase to refer to a married woman, and it implies that women should stay in the background and in the house, basically. So, yeah. The next phrase is ure no kori, which is pretty self-explanatory. It is used to refer to unmarried women, but the literal translation is unsold merchandise. The next word is otsubone-sama, and it refers to a middle-aged working female who has been with the same company for a long time. Women find it disheartening that they work so hard and are so dedicated to their company, only to be called a lady-in-waiting by their superiors, because they haven't left to get married yet. Kotobuki taishoku is the last one. It's congratulatory resignation of female workers due to marriage. So because of this expectation, it becomes difficult for middle-aged women to re-enter the workforce, and so that's another reason why the social norm shouldn't be pressured. In addition to all of these, there are, and so many more, there are no male equivalents because women are expected to be chosen by men. So if you don't get chosen by the time you get around your 30s, then you're unsold merchandise. But if you're a man, you can take however long you want to find a wife. It's also important to note that these meanings aren't just implications, but literal translations of the kanji. Like mentioned before, kanji are more complicated characters in Japanese that actually hold meaning. So, ure means to sell, and nokori means leftover or remains. So, the literal translation is unsold merchandise, and it is used, and like you call somebody that to like say that, oh, you're unsold merchandise because you don't have a husband or whatever. Yeah, that's great. Another pattern I found in my research was female prefixes that are added to job positions. When a male takes up a traditionally female position, the title changes to gender neutral. In contrast, when a woman takes up a position or occupation traditionally held by men, they add a prefix meaning female. For example, gin means member of Congress, and this was what you would call a congressman. But when a female gets the position, they change the title to josei gin, which means specifically a female congresswoman. This sometimes happens in English, but mostly in situations where the title originally has the word man in it, like congressman versus congresswoman. But in Japanese, the congressman will just be called congressperson, but a female will be called specifically congresswoman. So another example of this is shacho, which means CEO. CEO. But when there's a female CEO, they add onna to the beginning to mean female CEO, and they put that on official documents just so that everybody knows that's a girl. Similarly, women are sometimes referred to as otoko masari, which means male surpasser, and has a negative connotation. Here's a quote taken from Naoko Takemaru's study on women's perception of sexism in language. Enterprising women are criticized and ridiculed for lack of femininity. It is unfair and disheartening to label women with great drive as otoko masari, or male surpassing. Japanese pronouns are also problematic when it comes to gender. As I mentioned before, watashi means I, but there are actually many words to refer to oneself, which is different from English. We just have I or me. These are called first-person pronouns, and depending on how you want to present yourself, you can use different first-person pronouns. Watashi is the neutral one that is taught in textbooks, but here are a few more. So the first section are the gender-neutral ones, watakushi being the more formal version. The middle column are the feminine ones, so atashi, atakushi, which is more formal, and uchi. The last column is the more masculine and direct pronouns, so boku or ore. Yeah. So recent studies show that young women have started to favor neutral or even masculine language because more and more women want to be taken seriously in the workplace. Some teenage girls have even begun appropriating using these male first-person pronouns like boku or ore to kind of, stick it to the man. Using my research about how people talk in reality and what I learned at Lawrence, I was able to write a children's book in Japanese. I wrote it in English first and then translated that into Japanese. The hardest part about it was learning how to write a children's book because I've never gotten into story writing. So here it is. Here's some of my writing. Thank you to Lulu for drawing it for me, and to my sister Tasia and my instructor Akimi Adler for helping me make it sound a bit more natural and normal. I've been studying Japanese for a long time. For a while, not even realizing that it was going to become a passion of mine. For a while throughout my VNS career, I haven't been the most happy person, and as you can tell from my pictures from earlier on, I was kind of edgy and moody. I didn't know how to motivate myself, and I didn't think I had anything about me that stood out. I didn't have anything that I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't like that. I like to plan, if you didn't know, so I wanted some sort of plan. So after I found something that I wanted to improve on and started to love doing something, I decided that I would pursue a career in it being Japanese. So next year, I will be attending Carthage College, majoring in Japanese, and possibly minoring in something like business. Thank you. Questions? Yes?
When are you going to Japan next?
Okay, the question was, when am I going to Japan next? Probably my sophomore or junior year of college. I'll study abroad for a year. Yes, student?
What was your first introduction to Japan and Japanese culture?
The question was, what was my first introduction to Japan and Japanese culture? Probably like Spirited Away and Totoro. At the very, in my childhood, we would watch those movies, and my older brother would always play video games, Japanese video games, and Tasia, my sister. Yeah. Yes?
Once you got to class, what did you notice about your preparation
as it compared to what was happening in the class with the textbook, and how well did you get along with the others, with the curriculum academics?
Okay, so the question is, what did I notice as a difference between my individual study and my study at Lawrence?
And how did
Curriculum-wise?
how well did it prepare you? How did you measure up when you got to class?
Oh, how did I measure up when I got to class? Well, my class started at the very beginning, so I had already known a lot of it, but the hardest part and the biggest difference, I think, would be I never really spoke it because I was scared and I didn't want to, but when I was forced to in class, I think it was very helpful. So that's the biggest thing that was different. But I did most of the coursework with the textbook the same, just because Tasia used it in college, so she kind of knew how her college structured it. Yeah. Yes, Lulu?
What was the inspiration behind the story of your book?
The inspiration behind the story of my book. So the planning of my book, at first I wanted to have some sort of sociolinguistic issue intertwined in it, so it would be a culmination of both my Japanese learning of the language and my research. But I couldn't really find a way to do that as a way that a little kid would be able to understand. So I just wanted some sort of lesson at the end, and I figured that would be the easiest and cutest way to do it. But the plot is that the hippo can't sing, and then his bird friend tells all the other people who make fun of him that he can't sing either, the little bird, and then they go and have a party together, and everything's okay. Yes, Mr. Green?
So, Romance languages have genderized portions to their language too?
Mm-hmm.
And is that a different dynamic than what you're talking about with the genderized portions of Japanese language?
Okay, so the question is, Romance languages have gendered speech and gendered words, and how is that different, or is it the same from Japanese? It's different. So there's not car isn't gendered and stuff like that. Random words don't have any gender to them. It's just the way that the language was built. There's an example that I didn't show. The kanji for jealousy is a bunch of pictures of the kanji for girl. So a bunch of girls together is jealousy. So it's just kind of deep rooted. It's not really it's more of a cultural and social issue than just banyo is an O, so it's masculine. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Learning a language that has a different alphabet, I'm wondering, did you start with the English phonetics, or did you start right with the given alphabet, and also at what point did you start learning the English phonetic part too?
So the question was, how did I start learning Japanese because it has a different alphabet? So I started for a very, very short period of time, I used the Romanized phonetics. But that was the first thing that I learned was the writing system, so that I could be able to read very simple things and get away from that Romanized version, because like I kind of explained before, the sounds aren't quite the same. So I think it was easier and more beneficial, and also Tasia said it would be best to get off of the Romanization as soon as possible. Yes?
Can you scroll back a couple of pages and read that page of your story?
Read the page of the story, the whole thing?
Yeah,
Yes. Okay. This is the first page. I'm going to take this off, I think. Okay. 昔々、カバと牛月がいました。親友で森に住んでいました。ある日、カバ君の一番好きな 岩の上に座ってのんびりして坊主めくりをしていました。また坊主だとカバくんがぐちぐちと言いました。おーと月ちゃんが言いました。私は男とおっしゃった。あ、女とカバくんが言って角を取りました。いきなりノリからガヤガヤ声が聞こえてきました。Do you want to know what it means? Yes. So it says, once upon a time there was a hippo, thank you. A hippo and a bird. They lived in the forest and they were playing a card game called Bozu Mekuri. And this is their card play, which might not make sense if you don't know how to play the game, but it goes... They were sitting on the hippo's favorite rock, and and the hippo said, "Oh, I got a bozu again," which is like an old man. And then his bird friend is like, "Oh," and then his bird friend goes, "Oh, I just got a man," because like the cards have different people on them. So if you get a man, you get to do something. If you get a woman, you get to do something. And if you get an old man, you get to do something else. And then the hippo goes, "Oh, I got a girl." And he draws another card. And then suddenly they hear something from the forest. That's it. Yes, Miss Lukey?
Can you give other students advice about how to structure effective foreign language projects?
Okay, advice on how to structure effective foreign language projects. I would say, I don't know about like languages that have the same alphabet. You could probably just skip the whole learning the alphabet part. But and I found it hard for me to balance between everything. So just trying to keep that balance between vocabulary and grammar, and if you have to learn like kanji or something, memorizing all of those. So it's kind of hard at first, but once it's kind of dependent on your learning style and trying to keep a balance between those three aspects. And don't just like learn a bunch of vocabulary and then only be able to say like, this is an automatic rifle. Like, like this is a, and then like all these weird vocabulary. Yeah. So just try to learn everything at a steady pace. And work over the summer, please. If you're serious about it. Okay, cool. Oh, wait, Lauren has one.
How did you log that?
How did I log working over the summer?
Yeah.
Well, I would start a log on my academic report from the previous year, and then depending on whether I was going to put the credit towards the previous year or the next year, I would transfer, just like copy paste the logs into my next academic report. Yes?
Jesse, can you talk a little bit about your note-taking process for
Yeah.
this project?
For research?
Sure.
Okay. So for to take notes, I had a app on my iPad where you could like import documents and then write on them, so I could import the documents without printing all of the like 20-something pages out and then highlight it. And then I would take a blank piece of paper, go through that highlighted document, and put bullet notes of the bullets of the notes that I wanted to keep. And since this topic was pretty specific, one source covered one topic, so I didn't have to organize them very much after the fact. So, yeah. Yeah, and I kept them in a folder separate from my senior project. Yes, Sophie?
So I've heard a lot about like how senior projects should mostly be like research based. how did you get enough research if you only got like one source for one topic?
Okay, so the question is, how did I get enough research if only one source is one topic? So I got multiple sources for one topic, but like it wasn't like multiple topics for one source. That's what I was trying to say.
Okay.
So like each source was only one topic and not multiple, so I could just keep writing from the same source without having to organize the notes
Alright,
afterwards.
I understand.
Yay! Okay.